Today we're sharing our thoughts and opinions on empathy, enabling, and dismissal.
So empathy involves understanding and sharing the feelings of one another. Right? So it's the ability to recognize and validate someone else's emotion without necessarily agreeing with them. Enabling occurs when someone unintentionally or intentionally supports or allows destructive behavior in another person. And it also says that it often involves shielding the person from the consequences of their actions. And dismissing involves ignoring, minimizing, or invalidating someone else's feelings or experiences. It can create feelings of isolation and rejection.
I want to say that it's also important to know that there's a big difference between empathy and sympathy, because sometimes we think that we're being empathetic when we're saying like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. I'm sorry that you're going through that. But it's such a fine line that it can kind of look like we're just, we're sympathizing with the person, but we're not really trying to understand where the person's coming from or what's happening.
What stood out for me the most in the empathy definition was acknowledging the person's feelings, is really just hearing what the person is going through and being able to acknowledge it. And then is what's going to make them feel heard and feel like they're getting some sort of empathy. I watched this short video, and you probably saw it already too, on empathy, that Brene Brown. So there's that person who's like going through a hard time, and they're like deep in a valley or a cave or something. The person who's empathizing, they signify empathizing because they actually come down into the valley and sit next to them. And so I think like in real life, just like the definition you read, Liza, it's like empathizing is like acknowledging, like I see, I hear. And there's some relationships I have where I feel like I've been empathizing with the person, but I think I've just been enabling because shielding them from their consequences. That's the part that stood out to me the most. Like shielding the person from the consequences of their actions. And that's what you don't want to do, because it's not my responsibility to do that, and it hurts other people too.
Enabling and empathy, it's like it's a gray area, because if you've seen someone going through a difficult time and you don't know, you're like, let me help you out this time. Maybe this time around it's going to be different. And maybe let me do something different this time around. It's almost like you put more work on yourself trying to help out the other person. And you're trying to see yourself in that situation. Like, if I was in that situation, this is what I would like someone to do it for me. But I think like sometimes we don't understand that what that person is going through and what you might go through is not the same thing. It's like a totally different situation. It's a different scenario. But when we're enabling someone, I think like sometimes that's what we will like. That's what we're projecting. If I was going through a difficult time, what would I would like someone to do for me? And in doing so, the other person is we're shielding them and protecting them and continue to protect them from getting hurt. And it happens in different relationships, right? Like it could happen with family, it could happen in romantic relationship and friendships.
We just never want to see our loved ones hurting, and I can
Yeah.
understand that, like the enabling piece, because if it's someone that you love or you really care about
Mhm.
and you see them going through a hard time, like you kind of want to rescue them. You want to just like get them out of that situation, but sometimes we don't realize that we're probably making it worse by not letting them go through what they have to go through or learn what they're supposed to learn.
We do sometimes people could perpetuate that behavior for someone. They don't know when do I stop not enabling? When do I stop supporting someone? Right? Am I going to feel guilty? So it's almost like the work is on yourself, it's not on the other person as well. And how do you separate your emotions from that person?
An example that comes to my head just hearing that too is like when we think about like little kids who are like scared to like make their own, like for example, like order for themselves. Because I remember when I was younger, and if I would go into like a fast food restaurant, my mom would be like, all right, just go order. I'm like, wait, no, but like order for me, like do it for me. And my mom would tell me, like, no, you're 10 years old. If you want that, you can order it. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, but what if I say it wrong? And it's just like, no, like you're going to order it. And if you say it wrong, then you'll correct it. And then but it's more of like allowing me to do it and not being that overbearing parent was like, all right, fine, I'll just do it for you. Or even like setting up doctor's appointments. Like it can be something so minuscule, but like think about when you had to set up like your first doctor's appointment because your mom has been doing it forever or your parent has been doing it forever. And now you have to set up your own appointment. And your mom's like, no, I'm not calling. Like you need to call and you need to set that up. Like, think about how like a mom could just be like, all right, I'll just keep, I'm 25, but I'll still keep doing it. Now I'm 30. My mom still does my doctor's appointments. It's like, when do we also look at that as like, all right, when are we going to let my child become more independent?
How do we do the same thing for other people if we feel like we're in that enabling cycle or before we get
That's
to
a
that
great.
enabling cycle? Yeah. What do we do? When do we stop? How do we become aware that we are in that enabling cycle or that person has been enabled? Because the person might be in that cycle and we don't even know, and they don't even know it either.
So maybe you could help me because I actually have a situation, and so maybe we
Mhm.
could explore it in my situation. So I have a friend, her and I have known each other very long, so we're very close. So I've had other friends who've come to me and said like, "Oh, she did this, and why is she like this?" And I usually just say like, "Oh, well, that's just how she is," and like, "Oh, she probably didn't mean it. Well, if she didn't invite you, you can come with me. Like, let's go to like, don't even worry about it. Like, And so I do things like that just to honestly, now that I'm thinking, I almost didn't want to say the word, but I do things like that just to avoid. So what are your thoughts on what I could do?
Has anyone talked to her about it? Has anyone asked her any question? No. And if not, why? Is it because
I
it's
think
going to be
so.
awkward?
And well, it's because you'll probably get a mean answer.
Can we also say like not addressing it would be part of like the dismissal piece? So would not addressing it be in a way dismissing it? Like, you know what? Let's not talk about it. Let's not like, let's just kind of sweep it under the rug. It's not really a big deal. But to your point, Felicity, now it's becoming a big deal. Like it's affecting you. It's affecting our friendship. It's affecting other people's feelings. So now it's more of like there's light on it. It's like we have to do something. And since you're the closest, that does become like a heavy responsibility. Like I'm just thinking like this is heavy because this person, like you're looked at as like her number one. I'm just thinking like you're looked at as like her number one person. And not to put that on the spotlight, it's kind of like how do I address this in a way where it's I get my thought out, but then I get a real response
A
versus
real response. That's the key. Funny because I've heard this saying before, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so like I know that one day it's going to turn on me. It has to. There's no way. There's no way. And she's probably done it before. There's probably trips people have taken without me. I don't know. She's
Oh,
probably,
no.
it's probably already happened. I just don't even know. So
I think it might be helpful to one start from the beginning. And what I mean by the beginning is like let's try to unpack your friend. Like let's try to understand her. Like let's put ourselves in her shoes. Like let's try to understand why she's like this. Like what is it, right? How long has she been this way? Is it something that just started? And then what do I see in her as a friend that I want to still keep her as a friend? Because she must have good qualities. Yeah, there's some that are not the greatest, but she must have something good that people still want to be around her and hang out with her.
I'm also wondering if we have to bring it up with her. I would think I will have a conversation, especially if it's someone that has been a friend with me for a very long time and I value, like they bring in value to the relationship. I will ask her, I'm like, have you noticed? Because sometimes people do things and possibly intentional, but also like having this movie in our head without really having the protagonist of telling us their side of the story. It almost feels like an incomplete movie. And if she's a good listener, I would, like I've noticed and I'm wondering what is happening. The only reason why I'm bringing it up to you is because I know like some of these friends are very good to each other. And I feel like there's a tension that's building up. I wouldn't even mention the name of the friends, but just to get her input, like what is happening here, because you want to be around all your friends and everybody here having a good time and nobody feeling like less than other. That's a very awkward situation and very hurtful. I wouldn't want to be there. If like I know that someone is not, especially me, like if someone is not it's being disingenuine with me, long time ago, I would have not been to any of the scripts. I'd be like, I'll be the one. I'm gonna do you the favor. I'm so pro that I'm gonna do you the
right.
favor. I lose my
Same.
phone number
Yeah.
and every
Yeah.
every contact information that you have about. I'll be the first one. But if she has like good qualities and people still want to hang around with her, I think it's worth exploring with her. It's like not coming from a confrontational point, but just like an open conversation. Like I want to talk to you about something.
But I also feel like the ones that feel excluded, why don't they just reach out to her directly? Because why is
True.
it Felicity? job. You know, why I don't want that role. It's not, she doesn't have the problem with me. It's not a me problem. Like a part of me is like, if anyone like, and I don't want to be the person that they come to, like, because then it sounds like, oh, but so-and-so had a party and I wasn't invited. Like, I don't want to be in that combo. I would just be like, listen, speak to so-and-so about it. Because why do I have to put myself in the middle? You're the one that's feeling some type of way.
Yeah, I think it's because we're
the time.
Mm.
So
we're kind of like always together. So I think they think that it's like an easier way to go about it versus talking directly to her, because she can be like very dismissive, for back to that word, right? So I think that they're like, just like, oh, well, if I tell her, it's almost like parents, you know, if you tell one of your parents, you know, the other one's going to find out. So you tell the one
yeah.
that like,
I think it's also thinking about, what do you want the end goal to be? Because if we're going to start opening Pandora's box, we have to have a goal in mind. Like, what do we plan to accomplish? And what are we okay with, like, the consequences not being the way we plan they're going to be? So we also have to think about what the outcome might look like, because she may say, I still don't want so-and-so to come here, and this time I really don't want her to come, and I'm going to make it really clear. And then what's that going to look like for the friendship? Or she may say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. Yes, please invite so-and-so. Oh my God, yeah, this is great. So we have to also keep in mind the reactions of what that might look like and what that might change.
And will her relationship change with you?
With you, right?
that's another thing. I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will,
Oh.
because I've been an enabler this whole time. So as soon as you change, like, as soon as I change, the world's going to change, right? So I have to be prepared to deal with those consequences. I don't know if they're going to be pleasurable consequences or bad ones, uncomfortable ones, but I know that our relationship will have to change.
Is that something that you're ready for? The
I
change?
think so, only because it's been bothering me so much. So I know, like, you know, sometimes now I'm just like, I got to do something. So if I don't, then
Are you
it's
okay
like
with losing her as a friend?
I am. I'm cool with it. Just because, you know, I value like love and like peace and things like that in my relationships. That's what I'm really after. And if, you know, that other energy doesn't really work for me, not in my close relationships, you know?
I co-sign to that 100%.
Me too, 1000. Because you're right. Eventually, people like that, people like that end up losing, and they don't realize that. But having that kind of attitude, you end up with a lot less. And like you said, I think, Felicity, you've just been so, you know, compassionate towards her and just willing to kind of just sweep things under the rug. But you're right. It gets to a point where, I don't want to say it, but people like that end up very, very, very lonely for having that kind of attitude. And people catch on and people get tired of it. So if that's how she wants to move, then that's her prerogative. Thank you for tuning in to Unwind and Wonder. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe.